today we are talking Thomas Tuchel, and what if he became manager of Manchester United? He's probably the favourite now at the moment to be the next Man United manager. The point where Man United finally decide to get rid of Ten Hag, I imagine Thomas Tuchel will be available. I think his availability, his track record as well at winning trophies, Premier League experience, will probably give him the edge over some other candidates. All right. So in today's video, we're going to put together a 3-4-3. We're going to kind of focus on the Chelsea one that he had, the 3-4-3. I think it kind of suits Manchester United to a certain extent and might just give them an edge in certain games, especially when they're coming up against the big teams. Obviously, we can't really compare his time at PSG, where a lot of the time he played the 4-3-3. He had Mbappe and Neymar out wide and was dominant. So we're looking at maybe what could he do differently, what Man United are struggling with right now. And there's a little bit of a link between Lampard to Tuchel and then Ten Hag to Tuchel potentially as well. So we're going to look at that. We'll look at how Chelsea played in that Champions League season. We'll talk about him as a character as well. I think we'll start off with that. A bit of a decisive figure. Me personally, a couple of weeks ago, and months ago, even in the summer, when it was kind of spoke about Thomas Tuchel becoming the next manager, and obviously he spoke to Ineos during the summer, I wasn't too keen, and that just mainly because of his behaviour maybe towards managing upwards. So fell out with the sporting director at Dortmund over transfers, fell out with Leonardo at PSG, fell out with Todd Boehly at Chelsea, and then the Bayern Munich one was maybe a little bit unlucky. He came in at a really strange time when a lot of the players didn't want Julian Nagelsmann to go. There were definitely Nagelsmann players, didn't get what he wanted as well in the summer in terms of a CDM. Wanted João Paulinho from Fulham, didn't get him, and lo and behold, he leaves at the end of the season, and then that summer they don't actually get João Paulinho in. So there's a couple of things there, and looking into it more and more, it would still worry me just because of his character and his nature of being quite demanding. But I think there's a couple of little things in each part of his career where you can kind of understand. He's obviously very strong opinion, very strong in terms of putting across his point, which then has probably led to the downfall in losing his jobs at both PSG, Chelsea, and at Dortmund to start. I think he actually walked out on Dortmund, didn't he, after just winning the DFB Cup Pokal. Now, people will obviously look at the PSG where he fell out with Leonardo, and that was definitely on signing players and releasing players. He said, Thomas Tuchel basically come out and said he wasn't happy with the amount of players that were letting go on frees. He wanted a defensive midfielder. No, he wanted a centre-back. Leonardo then went out and got Danilo Pereira, who's had a very average PSG career, put him in. And then Thomas Tuchel in the end ended up using him as centre-back. So there was a little bit of that going on there. If you speak to PSG fans as well, I'd imagine their opinion of Leonardo is not that high as well. So there's a little bit of a gimme. He also was sacked after getting them through to the final of Champions League. I thought they played really well against Bayern Munich in that run, in the sort of like the COVID run. They'd won all 4 trophies, I think, all the 4 domestic trophies, which you'd expect that season. And then into the new season, he was sacked, I think, around, was it January or Christmas time? He was only a point off the lead. He was in third, only a point off the lead, and then Pochettino comes in, doesn't do any better, ended up finishing a point behind eventual winners Lille. So potentially, if Tuchel would have stayed, PSG would have then gone on to win the league that season. And then before we dive into the Chelsea one, obviously his time at Bayern Munich as well. Nagelsmann was sacked at a really weird time. Yes, he was a little bit fortunate to end up seeing the Dortmund bottle job, but I just think he went in at a time where players were not really having him. Last season as well, I'll put a little stat up on screen because I've totally forgotten it. Saw this little stat of what they were like last year when they didn't win the league to Leverkusen. Underlying numbers were good. Came up against an invincible team in Leverkusen, by the way. And at the same time, didn't get what he wanted. In the start of the season last year, he wanted a defensive midfielder, made that a priority. Didn't get one. They wanted João Paulinho. Bayern weren't prepared to pay what Fulham wanted. 12 months later, Tuchel's out the door, and who did he bring in? João Paulinho. So just a couple of little things there, just to give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. Me right now in the position, would I take him over Erik Ten Hag? Yes, I would. Is he the perfect candidate? No. However, I think there's a couple of structural things that he would be able to get right now. Is he a long-term manager? Who knows? But in today's world of football, who is a long-term manager? So potentially, I think he would be a really good fit. So let's talk Chelsea. So he came in at a time where Frank Lampard had been sacked, conceding goals heavily. conceded a lot of goals. And the first thing that he did when he came in was employ this 3-4-3. And this is what we're going to try and build with Manchester United. So what he liked to do was obviously still play out from the back. A lot of the games, apart from the big games, they'd often drop off a little bit and go into sort of like a mid to low block. A lot of the other time it was high press, would generally have more of the ball, sort of like in your late 50s and 60% possessions. And then in the big games, he would often drop into that low block. And his results against the top six are absolutely fantastic. Beat Manchester City a couple of times. He was very unlucky at his time at Chelsea, despite winning the Champions League. He lost in an FA Cup finals to Leicester, which was maybe a disappointing one. Lost to two League Cup finals to to Liverpool on penalties as well. Winning the Champions League, finishing fourth during the season that they got to the Champions League final and when Frank Lampard got sacked. And then in his next full season, then got to the point where they'd finished third in the league, so didn't do too bad, and got to 2 cup finals. So it wasn't Man United. We'd be dreaming of that right now. So it wasn't all bad. And if you look at his statistics, here is his first 50 games and his last 50 games. He actually did a tremendous job. Really good numbers. Clean sheets, good defensively, good attacking numbers as well. And it just fell off at the end with the introduction of Todd Bowley and the transfers were coming in, losing Rudiger and replacing him with people like Koulibaly was a bad move, and he started conceding goals. But he was sacked on the 7th of September. If you look at the results from the start of the season, they weren't actually that bad in the Premier League. I think they'd lost to Dynamo Zagreb, I think. That was the final one where it kind of looked like we knew he was all going regardless of the result. So probably sacked a little bit too early. However, once again, relationship issue was the problem, not so much what was going on the pitch. Okay, so on the pitch, they like to build out. So obviously they moved to this 3-4-3. He would generally like to have his wing-backs extremely high. So Chilwell and James will go extremely high, and they would build sometimes with a lopsided back four. Well, Azpilicueta coming out, and they would play with Mendy in this sort of like back four, and then they would have players such as Jorginho coming in, Kante or Kovacic coming in as well, giving them a really big numerical advantage in this area. So if any teams wanted then to press and go man for man in here, it left a weakness in these areas depending on what these two sort of like wide forward number 10s would do. They obviously got their width from the wing-backs. They had other options at times as well. There was also players like Ziyech that would occasionally come in, Pulisic, and then one point during the second season, Romelu Lukaku coming in as well. So there was a couple of tweaks. However, generally it looked like this 3-4-3, and what they could do at times as well, especially in build-up, a Mason Mount would often drop in, and a Kai Havertz. So it'd end up sometimes looking a little bit like a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-1-2, with Kai Havertz kind of playing as that false nine. So lots of different rotations in terms of the forward players, really aggressive wing-backs, players such as Havertz and Mount, great out of possession. So if they wanted to drop into maybe more of a 5-4-1, just like that, they could, and leaving Werner up front, a little bit of pace in behind. They would often also have Werner out here on the wide left and use Havertz as a false nine. They had Tammy Abraham as well at certain points, and then obviously Romelu Lukaku coming in to be that more of a out-and-out striker. What he did do though was give them a tremendous defensive base. Remember, they went from Lampard conceding heavily, like Man United are kind of doing at the moment, and doesn't have loads of really intricate passing. You know, it's not a Xavi Alonso, it's not a Pep Guardiola, it's not a Xavi Hernandez kind of intricate, everything Maresca to the point. It's a little bit more basic, a little bit more structured, and I think that's what Manchester United really need at the moment. And he gets a team kind of out of control and brings a little bit of basic structure back in, exactly what Man United need. I also think as well, and tell me if I'm wrong, that if Man United just went down the route of a 4-3-3, you know, like Chelsea are kind of doing now with a Maresca, even though they've made a really good start, they're never going to get to that high level because the quality of players are lower. And I think the advantage you kind of get is if you have a manager like a Simone Inzaghi, like a Tuchel, that maybe just does things a little bit different, like this 3-4-3. Manchester City in particular found it very, very difficult, Guardiola, to get decent results against Chelsea. In particular, I think it was FA Cup semi-finals and the Champions League final where Chelsea more than deserved that victory over Manchester City. And I think then if you flip it onto Manchester United, it could be a really good way to kind of get Manchester United back to kind of higher performance levels, keeping clean sheets, winning games. Now, there is certain elements of this, and I think it actually would really suit Manchester United with the number of centre-halves that we have, especially when Lenny Yoro becomes fit, what they could work on. There's obviously a little bit of an issue at wing-back, which, to be fair, is a really simple, if we're talking maybe, I don't know, we get sacked around Christmas time, Man United then come in, obviously they want the wing-backs to be high. Dalot can do it, no problem on the right. I don't think Luke Shaw could do it, but what he could do is be a little bit of a backup in this area. It also could fill in at the left centre-half. An option could be to bring in Ben Chilwell, who's out of favour at Chelsea, someone who knows the system, very good in that attacking third in terms of being direct, keeping the width, not wanting to come inside. So that would be a decent option to get in. You've also then got Mazraoui. You've got potentially as well, Thomas Tuchel at times used Ruben Loftus-Cheek as a right wing back. He also used Hudson-Odoi. So could an Anthony do it? Could a Garnacho do it in games where, they're maybe just looking at building against maybe a low block and just having Garnacho as an out-and-out winger? It could be done in certain games. So it kind of suits Manchester United. Another little issue, I think, is the movement of the front two. Fernandes could come back in because we think we can do that. He played a double pivot at times in that season where they finished third after the Champions League. A double pivot of Kovacic and Jorginho. Not a lot of legs in there. So I think an Agate Fernandes with the system behind them could definitely work. So with that, it allows Mason Mount, who was fantastic under Thomas Tuchel, to work in these number 10 areas. And then the only other issue is maybe what to do with like a wide player in terms of Rashford or Garnacho. Now, at Chelsea, he had Ziyech, he had Pulisic, he had Werner. So he's had to work in them scenarios where he's maybe had more of a number 10 in Havertz and Mount, and then more maybe a wide forward in terms of Pulisic, Werner, Ziyech, someone who more of a wide player who likes to drift in. So it can be done. And looking at that with the introduction of Lenny Yoro, who will be fit by New Year, that looks a really solid back three. You've got pace in wide areas. Lenny Yoro's fantastic on the ball, so they could do that offset back four. Onana on it. We could have Chilwell or whoever. Dalot would be good in that right-hand side. You've got Fernandes, who can do a little bit of Jorginho created role. You can have Kante, who was phenomenal in that Champions League final. Lingate, we know they're on different levels, but can do a similar role. Mount and Rashford in behind a Højlund, who would stretch the play. I think the thing with Chelsea as well is playing against in these bigger games, they could even do a Kobe Menu, move Fernandes into maybe a number 10 role alongside a Mason Mount, Menu in there with Agate, Fernandes and Mount, and then leaving Højlund, that Timo Werner kind of role, to really be an outlet in behind. And a lot of teams, especially in them big games, Werner, even though, once again, really poor in front of goal, we spoke about it in the Ange video that I've just done, he would be really good at stretching the player. If he stretches the player, then you would imagine it allow a little bit more space for Fernandes. And Mount's working. So there's definitely things in there that could work. I know the left wing back's a little bit of an issue. However, fix that would be, obviously, Malacia getting fit, probably not good enough, but just Ben Chilwell, because you'd probably get him dirt cheap in that scenario. Knows how Tuchel plays, so it would be an option. All right, now with that all being said, how does it look in FM24? So I've got three tactics. We've got Tuchel 1, Tuchel 2, and Tuchel 3. All three tactics will be available for you patrons. Link down in the description where you can download them and support the channel. There's overall, I think, 130 members at the moment supporting me and the content I make on the channel. So I appreciate that. And you get all the past downloads and future downloads going into what will be, hopefully, a spectacular FM25. Right, we're going to go through all the team and player instructions so you can copy it into your FM save yourself. All right, now I have brought Ben Chilwell across as well, just to give us that little bit of balance. Sweeper keeper, Onana on attack. I said if we want to build with that back, that sort of like lopsided back four, having Onana coming in as a sweeper keeper on attack would be good. We know he's comfortable at that. The three centre-halves, I've gone the right-hand side, which was the sign of that Azpilicueta role, would often go into these areas here when they were dominating. I don't want you to think that when they were playing against teams with low blocks, they would keep three at the back. They would often come into a attacking right back role, even inverted wing back role at times. Reece James played that and was absolutely phenomenal at the sort of like inverted centre-half kind of role. Really good when trying to break down teams as well. You know, you don't want to keep that back three just stood on the halfway line. So Lenny Yoro, wide centre-back on support. I think if you wanted to have as well, dribble more, depending on the player that you've got playing in there. Ball playing defender on cover. De Ligt could do the middle role, the commanding role. And then to give us a little bit of left-footed balance on that side, stay wider, dribble more for Martinez or even Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw would be fabulous at that. I've done stay wider as well. So then if they do just build with the three, Martinez can come into these roles. And once again, if Martinez does that, that will probably allow the two fullbacks to go a little bit further up than what they naturally do. Wing backs on both sides, just wing back on attack, get in high as much as possible. If you ever find that they're not, sometimes Chelsea and who else is good at Gasperini at Atalanta are really good at having their fullbacks do a lot of the pressing work. So if you really want your fullbacks, your wing backs to press and get higher up, one option is to get them to man mark the right back. So Chilwell would mark the right back and then Dalot would mark the left back. And it's a really good way of just getting them higher up the pitch and help with your press, because what you don't want is them sitting in to make a five. They will have to do it at certain points, especially when we talk about the bigger games. But if you want them a nice high position in and out of possession, wing back on attack and click that little mark specific position on. Into the middle midfield, obviously Ugarte is going to get his go at some point. So ball winning midfielder on defend with then Fernandes as a DLP on support. I was going to do a roaming playmaker, but we really don't want him kind of getting ahead of the ball too much. Him supporting him behind, like we talked about in that register video, would be absolutely perfect. More direct passing potentially, dribble less potentially, depending on the personnel. Now, I did have this one out wide, but to suit kind of the role that we want Mount or a Fernandes to do, AM on support or AM on attack, shadow striker, depending on the opponent, but generally an AM on support. Left-hand side, I've kind of thought, right, this needs to be the wide role. This is where Rashford, Garnacho are probably then going to play in this sort of like formation. So I've gone inside forward on attack and sit narrow just because I want that direct running in behind. I'm trying to think of Timo Werner, what they would do if it was a Timo Werner out on that left-hand side. So that's why I've got that on. And then Højlund DLF on attack will lead the line, will chase channels, but obviously will drop in and allow that space for Rashford, hopefully, to exploit. Positive mentality, play out of defence, work into box, fairly attacking width. Shorter passing, he did have good possession numbers. They do obviously play a little bit more direct, so you could tweak that depending on your opponent, especially maybe a Manchester City, a Liverpool, even maybe an Arsenal with a high line. Take short kicks, counter press, not a massive thing on counter attack. We'll naturally do that anyway with Rashford and the centre forward. However, we do want to kind of build with the back three, the back four if you're including Mendy. So I don't want to have an over-reliance of just going forward all the time. And then out of possession, this changes on who they're playing. So a lot of the games, they were very dominant. I thought they were maybe a little bit lacklustre and boring against some of the lower teams, and that wasn't generally the case. They did try and press high. It was just in the bigger games where we would drop into more of a standard mid-block, or even, to make it super compact, higher line but with a mid-block, so really compact. Anything over the top, then obviously the Mendy would be there, Onana would be good at that, and really nice and compact. Invite crosses, because Chelsea had Azpilicueta, Silva, Rudiger, amazing in the air. The idea is that they would stay as compact as possible, invite crosses in, and then hopefully goalkeeper, centre-halves can deal with that. Man United centre-halves, Martinez, De Ligt, Maguire, Yoro would be absolutely superb at dealing hopefully with any balls into the box. And then trap outside, once again, just to help us be nice and narrow. Now, I have done a Tuchel 2, which is just a little bit different out on that right-hand side. Just allows you to play maybe a Garnacho, a Diallo, Rashford, whoever, out on that right-hand side. You know, at times at Chelsea went with Pulisic, Werner, Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi. So there's an option there to change it up. And then the Tuchel 3 did do this at times when especially when a Lukaku came in. He obviously did a Werner and Havertz as well. So the Havertz kind of role is the DLF. That could be a Joshua Zirkzee. And then you could have maybe Marcus Rashford playing as a wide forward. You could maybe even do stay wider on that left-hand side as well with an AP or just an AM on support. All the other instructions, though, are pretty much exactly the same. And it's worked pretty well. We've had a really good preseason. I've tweaked a couple of things. We've just lost at Newcastle, which is disappointing, but it was quite an even game. But we've beaten Manchester City in the Community Shield. Couple of 0-0 draws. That was playing more of the mid-block one against the bigger team, so you can see really defensively solid. And then we've beaten Manchester City by playing a higher line and absolutely deserved it. Ben Chilwell as well, getting on the score sheet. Okay, so our first goal, Marcus Rashford, just a couple of things I could see is in build-up. So Martinez, the left centre-half, just in a wider role. It just helps you build with a more of a wider back three. If we just zoom out a little bit, you can see, look how tied Dalot is on that right-hand side as well, which is really cool. We've got Mason Mount finding a really good 10 position. You've got your two players in Hagate and Fernandez. Let me just highlight these so we just see how the play develops a little bit. Rashford at the moment keeping his width, but we have got Sitnauer on, remember. And then as we play, obviously you get a really good overload to start with in Football Manager when you're playing against maybe a 4-3-3 with that sort of like 3v1 with the three centre-halves playing against sort of like the lone striker. So we've managed to get through that initial build-up. We've managed then to play a ball into Højlund. Mount in there, and now we've got a little bit, we wouldn't say an overload, but we've got 4 players in that central area. Patient in possession once again. Højlund coming in, linking the player very well. This is what I like with the inside forward, that he's not holding the wing. And what it is doing is allowing, if we just zoom in a little bit, is allowing that space then for Ben Chilwell to attack. Suits Rashford coming in off that left-hand side. Ben Chilwell will hold his width. Martinez getting involved as a ball-playing defender. Chilwell in there. And then a really good finish from Marcus Rashford. That Sitnauer instruction just allows for that space to be created with then that overlap on the left-hand side from the wing-back. And then this one here ends up in the Ben Chilwell goal. There's a little bit of recycling possession. We come all the way back to Yoro, the centre-half, wide centre-back on support, carrying the ball forward, committing players. Can you see Ben Chilwell's movement now? And what it does is give him space. Because Rashford's gone in and acted as like another striker to play alongside Højlund, it gives Chilwell that space to move into. And what it is going to do is potentially catch out one of those wide, not lazy, because I wouldn't call Bernardo Silva a lazy forward, but maybe a more Salah say, doesn't like doing that backtracking, and Chilwell finds the space and the ball at the back post. I do think it would be a really good pickup for Manchester United. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed it. Little bit of what ifs, a lot of what ifs and maybes, but I suppose that's the way Manchester United may be looking. Tuchel, yes or no? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I am actually going to put this video out with a little poll as well on my communities page. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. However, there's not a lot of perfect options out there. Xavi Alonso's not going to come, is he? Pep Guardiola's not going to come. Jurgen Klopp's not going to come. Julian Nagelsmann's not going to come. Simone Inzaghi's not going to come. Is he better than Ten Hag? Yes. Will he potentially cause problems? Yes. However, it's not all down to Tuchel. I will say that. I will give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt after doing a little bit of research. My answer in the summer was completely no. I'm now moving towards yes, with the right structure in place, keeping the same. The thing at Chelsea was he was used to doing certain things. They then got rid of a lot of people around him, including Petr Cech and was it the old chairwoman? I can't remember her name. Got rid of her when Todd Bowley came in. So a lot of changes. Players went out. Wasn't really involved in the transfers. And as you could see, Todd Bowley's then 12 months later, pretty much upset, 18 months later, then upset Matt Pochettino, and that's led to him leaving. So not all Tuchel. He's not so much of a bad guy, is he? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you later.